The Rules on the Chest, Part 1. On June 23rd, villager Chinimao was about to head to his farmland to work while the morning was still cool. His vegetable plot was on the mountainside across from his home, and the path to it led past a reservoir. Out of curiosity, he glanced into the water and was instantly terrified by what he saw. After receiving the report, the police rushed to the scene promptly. The water in the reservoir was crystal clear, allowing them to faintly see several bricks tied to the body, confirming that this was definitely a homicide case. The location was quite remote. Few people came here except for the local farmers working nearby. Yet it borders several adjacent towns and counties, sitting right at the junction of 3 administrative regions. As a result, the police could not confirm whether the crime had actually taken place locally. Based on the scene investigation, this spot was determined to be a body dumping site rather than the original crime scene. Prolonged immersion in water had rendered the corpse's face unrecognizable. Judging from her clothing and appearance, the victim was a young woman with a keen sense of fashion who clearly put a lot of thought into her look. No identification documents were found on her body. The victim had dyed her long hair red and styled it elaborately, and she wore a distinctive hair accessory. Such a refined appearance suggested she was not a local rural woman, but rather someone who worked or lived in a relatively economically developed county town. An autopsy revealed that the victim was between 30 and 40 years old and had died of suffocation. The unique identifying mark was a rose tattoo on her chest. She had also gotten professional nail art done. Focusing on these distinctive features, the police visited nail salons and hair salons in the areas surrounding the crime scene. Meanwhile, officers conducting field investigations discovered fragments of hollow bricks near a water outlet nearby. Preliminary comparisons showed that these fragments matched the hollow bricks tied to the victim's body. Subsequently, the police conducted a simulation experiment on the reservoir dam and concluded that the victim had been thrown into the water from this very location. Even though all the evidence uncovered so far was within the boundaries of Indian County, the police could not confirm that the victim was from here or that the murder had occurred locally. The police carried out inquiries in nearby towns, but days passed without any useful leads emerging. They visited every nail salon and hair salon in the area, yet none of them had ever done nail art of that specific style. To the police's surprise, the breakthrough came not from the victim's appearance but from the hollow bricks. This type of brick was not produced locally in Guizhou. Some locals reported having seen large quantities of identical bricks during trips to Xiushan. The police then traveled to Xiushan and launched an investigation by posting missing person notices and conducting door-to-door inquiries. Eventually, the owner of a nail salon in a remote area recognized the nail art as one she had done herself. When the police asked her to describe the customer's physical characteristics, her account matched the victim perfectly. However, the salon was quite busy, so the owner could not recall the exact date the customer had visited, only that it had been more than a week prior. Taking the salon as the starting point, the police reviewed all surveillance footage in the surrounding area. They eventually spotted a figure resembling the victim at a hotel next to a gas station. Surveillance cameras at the hotel front desk clearly showed 2 women checking in together. The woman pulling a suitcase was the victim, and she was wearing exactly the same clothes as those found on the corpse. The timestamp on the footage was 10:38. On June 14th, 9 days before the body was discovered, The police later tracked down the woman who had checked in with the victim, a local resident of Shushan. This woman stated that she and the victim had actually been strangers before meeting at a beauty and hair salon. They had struck up a conversation about a shared interest and immediately hit it off. Since the woman owned the car and the victim had traveled from out of town with a suitcase, she had kindly offered to drive the victim to the hotel. The two women stayed in the hotel room for roughly 20 minutes before emerging together, with the victim seeing her new acquaintance off. The victim then took the elevator back up to her room. At that moment, an unfamiliar man appeared on the surveillance footage. The interaction between the man and the victim suggested an intimate relationship they embraced as soon as they met. Given that the victim had traveled from another city with her luggage, the police suspected she had come to Shushan to stay with this man. Based on this footage, the police identified the man as a prime suspect. Statistics show that in more than half of female homicide cases, the perpetrator is the victim's husband, boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, or suitor. Furthermore, this man was the last person known to have seen the victim alive. The police also discovered that after the victim and her female companion entered the hotel room, the man had followed them upstairs and had been acting suspiciously. He clearly knew which room the victim was staying in, yet instead of knocking on the door to greet her, he had lurked around stealthily, as if trying to avoid being seen. He even pressed his ear to the door to eavesdrop. When he heard the sound of the door opening as the victim and her companion prepared to leave, he panicked and hid, acting like someone with a guilty conscience. Only after the female companion had departed and the victim was alone did he dare to come out of hiding. Throughout this entire sequence of events, the man had been pretending to be on a phone call. The police deduced that he was not actually talking to anyone. The phone was just a prop to avoid drawing attention to his suspicious behavior. They then spent the night at the hotel. The next morning, they checked out and left together. To an outsider's eye, the man seemed deeply fond of the victim. Their shopping spree and interactions were consistent with those of a loving couple. Surveillance footage from the hotel entrance showed the victim leaving in a van driven by the suspect. The police then tracked the van's route and found that it had passed through a checkpoint in Qingshitown. At the time, the man and woman in the vehicle had been chatting and laughing, appearing perfectly normal. Using the information from the hotel's check-in records, the police finally confirmed the victim's identity. They contacted the family of Yang Li, hoping they would cooperate and provide relevant clues, but to their surprise, the family reacted with strong resistance. Yang Li's social media accounts were still being updated, so her family firmly believed that the victim could not possibly be her. What was more, Yang Li had sent text messages to her family the day after the police found the body. To verify the victim's identity, the police collected blood samples from Yang Li's family members and sent them for forensic testing. According to the family, Yang Li had been working alone in Guangzhou for several years. The Rules on the Chest, Part 2. Last April, Yang Li divorced her husband, and their school-age child stayed with her ex-husband. Although Yang Li had been living away from home, she maintained close contact with her family. In fact, these past few days, Yang Li had still been texting him. However, shortly before the police arrived at her family's home, Yang Li suddenly sent a text message to her brother, stating that she no longer wanted to contact her family. After receiving the message, Her family tried calling Yang Li several times, but no one answered. Yet her family never imagined she had been killed. They thought she was just having a falling out with them. Through DNA testing, the victim was confirmed to be Yang Li. At that time, the police suspected Yang Li's boyfriend, Li Caifu. Yang Li had told both her family and friends that she was in a relationship and that she had a very good relationship with the man. Yang Li liked this man very much and had always talked about marrying him and living together. Shortly before the incident, Li Caifu, Yang Li's boyfriend, had even had a video call with Yang Li's mother. In the eyes of outsiders, this was certainly a sign of a stable relationship. After investigation, the police found that the two had met while Yang Li was working. Yang Li had been working in Guangzhou, specifically at a foot massage parlor, and Li Caifu was one of the owners. Yang Li's good friend also testified to the police that before the incident, Yang Li had gone to Chongqing to find Li Caifu and had never returned since. After identification, the suspect appearing in the hotel was indeed Li Caifu. The van that Yang Li had taken last was also being driven by Li Caifu all the time. According to ticket purchase records, on June 26th, Li Caifu left Xusheng County by car. He then fled to various places. On July 7th, the police learned that Li Caifu had settled in Zhongshu and immediately rushed there to arrest him. After being arrested, Li Caifu quickly admitted to killing Yang Li. But he refused to admit his romantic relationship with Yang Li. It was quite ridiculous, as if denying it would make him nobler or something. Li Caifu claimed that he was just fooling around and that it was not a real relationship at all. He even said it was all Yang Li's wishful thinking. In fact, it was Li Caifu who had been deceiving Yang Li, saying that he was divorced and wanted to find another woman to remarry. Yang Li never doubted him. She thought that since both of them were divorced, it was only natural for them to remarry and form a family. She had no idea that it was all a scam by Li Caifu from start to finish. Later, because the foot massage parlor's business was poor, Li Caifu withdrew his shares and returned to his hometown, Xusheng County in Chongqing. Li Caifu emphasized that he had a quarrel with Yang Li before leaving. For this reason, Li Caifu emphasized that by doing so, he had dumped Yang Li, adding that he thought they would never contact each other again. He even proudly mentioned the fact that he had hit Yang Li. However, according to the police investigation, after Li Caifu returned to Xusheng County, it was not at all the case that he had no further contact with Yang Li as he claimed. On the contrary, their contact became even more frequent. At that time, Li Caifu had even promised Yang Li that he would go to her hometown and marry her. Yang Li was very happy, so she bought a ticket to go to Xusheng County to meet Li Caifu. Because Li Caifu was not actually divorced at all, he tried his best to dissuade Yang Li from coming. You lied to her about wanting to marry her, and then you say she didn't believe you. Can you believe he had the audacity to say that? Later, Yang Li still bought the ticket and came. In fact, after Li Caifu returned to Xusheng, he lived with his whole family, his elderly father, his wife, and their son and daughter. Of course, he dared not let Yang Li come to his house. Later, Yang Li checked into a hotel. After meeting with Li Caifu, he showed no signs of abnormality at all. He still accompanied Yang Li shopping like a couple and even stayed with her in the hotel at night. This was what Li Caifu called impossible. It's all Yang Li's wishful thinking. Yang Li thought she was in a relationship and was very happy. But in Li Caifu's eyes, Yang Li was pressuring him. The most ridiculous part was that Li Caifu described his act of deceiving her into a sexual relationship as not being able to resist Yang Li's temptation. Wow! He made himself sound like an innocent young man. A cheating scumbag with so many excuses. Since she was there for marriage, Yang Li proposed to go to Li Caifu's house to have a look. Li Caifu had only wanted an extramarital affair from the beginning, so he would never let Yang Li go to his house. Later, Li Caifu took Yang Li out to play and made various excuses to put her off. But he never succeeded in dispelling Yang Li's idea of going to his house. How dare he say that? Earlier, Yang Li had called her family to talk about her relationship with Li Caifu. But in the eyes of the guilty Li Caifu, all of this was Yang Li threatening him. During this back and forth, the two finally had a falling out and quarreled fiercely. Like many murderers, Li Caifu made up so many excuses just to prove that he didn't want to kill anyone. It was Yang Li who forced him to do it. Later, Li Caifu picked up a white cloth from his car and strangled Yang Li to death with it. Yang Li probably never understood until her death why the man who had repeatedly said he would marry her would suddenly kill her cruelly. After killing Yang Li, Li Caifu remembered passing by a reservoir before. The place was very remote, so he decided to throw Yang Li's body there. He even specially picked up some bricks from the roadside, wanting to make Yang Li sink to the bottom forever and never be discovered. To cover up his crime, Li Caifu took Yang Li's mobile phone, continued to post on her social media, and even sent text messages to Yang Li's family imitating her tone, creating the illusion that she was still alive. The most incredible thing was that even after being arrested and in prison, this man was still boasting. He said he could never have had feelings for Yang Li because if he had wanted a relationship, there were several better women at the foot massage parlor at that time, and he could have chosen someone else. His implication was that he looked down on Yang Li. The lies and shamelessness of men are truly breathtaking.